Good afternoon, everybody, and Hanukkah Sameach to all of you. Firstly, if I could begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land in which we gather and pay my respects to those past and present. We have a number of official dignitaries in the room, which I'll recognise shortly. But firstly, if I could especially recognise the Deputy Premier, James Merlino, the Honourable James Merlino, and congratulate you on a very decisive win last week. Welcome to Parliament, and I wanted to begin, which I have done in previous times, by just having a show of hands for those of you who've come to Parliament for the very first time. Who's your first visit? Nice and high. Well, welcome to Parliament, and for those of you that live here, welcome to your Parliament, and please have the opportunity to visit and have a look around after today's proceedings. If I could also welcome a number of very important dignitaries that we have here today. Firstly, to Albert Udon, who will be speaking shortly. Albert, welcome to you. To Rabbi Philip Helbram, who is the President of the Rabbinical Council of Victoria. Welcome to you, Rabbi, and to all the Rabbonim that are here today. It is great to see so many rabbis that are present in this very auspicious occasion. To Francis Prince, who is representing the JCCB, welcome to you, and also to Rabbi Herzog from the Chabad of Melbourne. If I could particularly pay a tribute to Rabbi and the Chabad of Melbourne that have been running this important event for how many years? 12 years, and I think we should give them a big round of applause. That is fantastic. To Minister Martin Foley, who is here, also to our Speaker, our current Speaker and our current President, our Speaker Colin Brooks, and our President Bruce Atkinson. Welcome to both of you, who are the presiding officers of this Parliament, which is really the most important people that ensure the functionality of this great Parliament of Victoria. We also have a number of newly elected, or soon to be newly elected, members of Parliament. So Nina Taylor and also Paul Hamer. Congratulations to both of you and welcome. We may have others in the room that I haven't met yet, so if they are here, welcome to you. And also Kate Ashmore, who is a candidate, Liberal candidate for Macnamara. Welcome to you, Kate. We have probably somebody that is absolutely top at the pops that I wanted to recognise today, and that is Tim Reese, who is the saxophone player for the Rolling Stones. So welcome to you. Now the celebrity status of this event has really lifted, hasn't it? That's terrific. And before I give some introductory remarks, I just wanted to particularly thank those within the Jewish community of Melbourne that many of you have been watching my seat in the last week. That has been certainly a roller coaster ride for me. And it looks like that we are going to get there, and today is just the final count. At the moment I'm 423 votes in front, and it seems all done. So thank you very much to our community, which I absolutely don't take for granted. It is the best electorate. I'm biased, I know there are other members in the room, but it absolutely is. I've lived there all my life. I've been passionate about Caulfield and our community. And there is nothing better that I can think that anyone could do than to represent the wonderful people of Caulfield and the Jewish community, in which I'm so proud to do so. So thank you very much. So Hanukkah is such a great celebration for all of us. The festival of lights, the festival of miracles, the festival in which we see again good over bad, good over evil, and how many times have we seen the Jewish community and Israel tested? Time and time again we see it. And certainly Hanukkah is one of those examples where we had a small army, the Maccabees, take the most largest and strongest army and effectively take back Jerusalem and take back the temple. And we saw the miracles of the menorah, the 8 days, a candle, the oil that was only meant to last one day that lasted 8 days. The modern day version would be our mobile phones that were on 10% and only 1 day's worth, and we've got a week out of them. I mean, you know, really, this is a modern day miracle we're talking about. But it's more than that. It's more than that. It shows that as a community that we always stand strong, committed, and as a Jewish community, we're always proud not just to look after ourselves, look after our own, but look after others. And I think that is something that holds us in always great stead, because you see here in Victoria, the Jewish community that has always put their hand up in just about everything, whether it's health, whether it's education, whether it's the arts, in anything. The Jewish community are the first to stand up when things aren't right, are first to help a brother or a sister when things aren't right. And that's why we should be proud, and we can be proud as a community, of the work that our community, a small community compared to other multicultural communities in Victoria, but certainly sizable in our passion, in our strength, in our values. And that's what makes me be a proud Jew, more determined to continue to do the work that we need to do. The modern day miracles for me, and we certainly see Israel constantly challenged. But the modern day miracle is that Israel gets stronger. Israel, through its work, Israel through what it does in contributing to the rest of the world, is a beacon of light, And for me, the modern day miracle that I would hope for, or miracles, is firstly to see those that stand up against Israel recognise that Israel has a right to exist in its place within society and be able to continue to do the work that it does and not continue to hate, but work together with Israel and build the world to make it a better place. And the second thing is for Israel to rightfully choose, as it does, where its capital is, Jerusalem, with the ability to be able to have its embassy and embassies, including the Australian embassy, move to Jerusalem. And that is something that I know it's harder as a Victorian Member of Parliament to do, but passionately I will continue that fight and that struggle to ensure that Israel can get on with continuing to do the great work that it does and ensure that it determines its fate, its future, and does the great work that it does for the broader community and for the rest of the world. So today we have a number of great speakers that are going to talk to you and certainly give the relevance and the importance to this very important festival, the Festival of Light, Hanukkah. And it is very important that we are celebrating this event here in the Parliament of Victoria, because in the Parliament of Victoria, even though we have two major political parties that will go head to head on a number of things, when it comes to its support for Israel, when it comes to support for the Jewish community, that is where we determined to work together. And I can say that we have worked together through the Friends of Israel, which we had Marsha Thompson that worked with me up until recently with her retirement as the co-chairs of the Parliamentary Friends of Israel, have been the largest and strongest friendship group in this Parliament, very proudly so. And it is through these great halls here where we hopefully continue to make these laws and ensure that multiculturalism continues to thrive in Victoria, and that we ensure that various communities like our communities continue to do the great work that they do. And on that note, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the Deputy Premier of Victoria, the Honourable James Merlino, to address us. Thank you.
Thanks very much, David, for that warm welcome, and it is an absolute pleasure to be here today. I'd like to firstly begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather and pay my respects to elders past and present and any elders who may be with us today. I'd also like to acknowledge a number of people. Rabbi Chaim Herzog, the Director of the Chabad of Melbourne, Rabbi Philip Heilbrunn, the President of the Rabbinical Council of Victoria, to my parliamentary colleagues, David Southwick, the member for Caulfield. I had my near-death experience in the 2010 election. Got there by the skin of my teeth, so I know the pain that you're going through, David. To my ministerial colleague Martin Foley, the member for Albert Park, Colin Brooks, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly here, and Bruce Atkinson, the President of the Council. To our new members, can I particularly welcome Paul Hamer, member for Box Hill, and Nina Taylor, who is becoming a member of the council. Hag Sameach. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today for this joyous occasion. On behalf of the Premier of Victoria, the Honourable Daniel Andrews, I want to pass on his and my best wishes to Victoria's Jewish community for the festival of Hanukkah. This is one of the most important events on the Jewish calendar, and I know for our Jewish community this is a time for reflection and celebration. Hanukkah reminds us of the strength and devotion of Victoria's Jewish community, and it gives us the chance to rejoice in the universal symbol of hope which the lighting of the menorah represents. This is a symbol that we can all embrace, a joy that we can all share. And like all good holidays, Hanukkah is a time for family, friends and the community to spend some quality time with each other. And it's particularly fun for children, spinning the dreidel, giving Hanukkah gelt and enjoying ponchkas as well. This is a chance to take a step back from our day-to-day lives and enjoy the comfort and the joy we gain from the people closest to us. It's a reminder to cherish the time that we do have together and enjoy the peace, harmony and respect that we're surrounded by. Embracing one another's cultural and faith traditions is something that we do very well here in Victoria. It's why we have one of the most successful multicultural and multi-faith societies in the world. Victorians have been justifiably proud of this fact for generations. And today, I would argue that Victoria is richer in diversity than ever before. Just over 28% of Victoria's population was born overseas, bringing with them the vibrant cultural influences from every corner of the globe. Victorians come from over 200 countries of origin, speak 260 languages and dialects, and follow 135 faiths. This is a wonderful thing. It is Victoria's greatest strength. And as the Minister for Education, I believe embracing a global perspective is one of the keys to a bright future for our children and our state. And one way we do this is by doing what we're doing right now and taking the opportunities to share and to celebrate occasions like this. Across the range of cultures, languages and faiths that make up our beautiful community, there is a common bond, a shared commitment. And here today it's plain to see that unity in action. We all believe in the values of diversity and respect as key pillars of a cohesive and prosperous society. Victoria's Jewish community, the largest in Australia, is very much a part of this. In fact, the Jewish community is a leader in this. This is a community that has made and continues to make an enormous contribution to our state across all disciplines, all activities, not only in cultural and economic terms, but also in terms of respect for diversity and community harmony, embracing multiculturalism, advocating for equality, justice and dignity. Over many years, our Jewish community has built a legacy for intercultural understanding and respect that enriches the lives of every single Victorian. That's why it's such a pleasure to be here today to rejoice in the spirit of Hanukkah with you all. I'd like to thank Chabad of Melbourne for organising this event with support from Central Shul Chabad. I'd also like to commend your outreach work in the Jewish and the wider communities. And thank you for bringing ancient Jewish traditions to a wider audience through events such as this. I join with all Victorians in wishing our state's Jewish community a joyful celebration and a happy and peaceful Hanukkah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James. Well, it's my great pleasure now to introduce Albert Udon AM, Chairman of the Urbanist Group, to now address us. Now, Albert wears a number of different hats, and I'm not necessarily in the order that I'm going to give them to you. Firstly, as a musician, and secondly, as a businessman, thirdly, certainly as a philanthropist, and fourthly, I've got to say, more recently, when I watched him do an interview with the Rolling Stones on YouTube the other day, I reckon, is a pretty good interviewer as well. So he certainly wears a lot of hats. He has been very active with causes, and especially with helping with Israel in conducting, organising and running the Australia-Israel Leadership Dialogue, which has taken many various leaders from Australia and other parts to Israel. And that advocacy has been really, really important, where in terms of a very strong political exchange and meeting with other leaders all around the world in Israel. Also involved in the Australia-Israel Cultural Exchange, in bringing films through a festival into Australia and sharing some of the great cultural riches of Israel. A man that certainly is very passionate about our community, about Israel and about helping others. Could you please join with me in welcoming Albert Udon.
What do they say? The longer the introduction, the smaller the hat. Rabbi Herzog, Rabbanim, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know why I was exactly invited by Rabbi Herzog to speak, but every year I get a call, will you be here this year? And usually at this time of the year I'm away. And this year I nearly lied, but I didn't have the heart. So here I am. I figured that probably Rabbi Herzog would like me to reflect on the meaning of Hanukkah, but I'm not a rabbi, but I'll do the best I can. First of all, I'd like to reflect on anti-Semitism, because having been born in an Arab country, having grown up until well into my adulthood in Europe, and going back to Europe so often because my family is there, my mother, Baruch Hashem, is still with us, and I go and visit her several times a year. I'm very close to what's going on in the rest of the world. Maybe Australia, it's kind of a little bit spared, but not that spared into the global anti-Semitism renewal that we see. And perhaps it's a 100-year cycle, but just imagine where we were 100 years ago. I think the major difference, of course, is that we have Israel, and that is a major difference. But at the same time, anti-Semitism adapts itself, and today the anti-Semitism is directed towards Israel. There's no doubt about it. So it's important to know where we are in the cycle of anti-Semitism, because an observation, I'm sure there's no PhD that's been done about this, but an observation, if you look back at the last 2,000 years, I mean, you've got the regular intervals. We know what happens. There are massacres, and in between there is anti-Semitism, and we get some periods where everything is calm. And for a lot of Jews, we think that's it, that's a new era, and anti-Semitism will never happen again. But we always have tears of blood to know that that's actually not the case. So I don't want to give you a pessimistic message, but we have to be on the lookout. And here's Hanukkah to remind us how anti-Semitism can be fought, because you could think, well, there's nothing we can do, we may as well join the party and maybe get assimilated, but precisely Hanukkah tells you otherwise. If I can place Hanukkah in its historical context, Hanukkah happened 180 before our Common Era. That's exactly 2,198 years. So I guess in 2 years we're going to celebrate the 2200th anniversary of Hanukkah. So what's interesting to note is that Hanukkah didn't happen at the end of the uprisal, but at the very beginning. The uprisal was 25 years long, and Hanukkah happened at the 5th year of that uprisal. And what's important also to note is that 180 BC, that was the era that was under the Greeks. As you know, the Second Temple was built 530 BCE, and it was under the auspices of the Persian. So what happened is that Alexander the Greek at some point conquered Persia, and as a result was basically the master of the modern world at the time. He passed away in his 30s. That was, by even the measure of the time, it was very young. And the world got shared among 4 of his generals. One of his generals took Syria and Turkey. That was Seleucus, I believe it is. It's the name of a cheese, a Greek cheese. But Seleucus was on the north side, and on the southwest side, you had Ptolemy, the general Ptolemy. And so Israel was the political football between those 2 empires. One time it was under Ptolemy, one time it was under Seleucus. For the Jews, it didn't make any difference. They were persecuted all the same. Thank you very much. But at that time, it was Seleucus, and in fact, it was his descendant, Antiochus, I believe. Antiochus the Great, he called himself. But that was a self-title. And Antiochus, his credo was not an anti-Semitism like Hitler. He didn't want to kill the Jews. He simply wanted them to stop their practice. He wanted them to become good Hellenists, to join the culture. We had the deputy premier who talked about multiculturalism. They did not want multiculturalism. They wanted to have one culture, and that was the Greek culture. And to teach those Jews a lesson, what did he do? He took the temple, and imagine this, he desecrated the temple, brought in all his gods, that is the Greek gods, Zeus, etc., and he introduced into the temple also some prostitution. And so imagine if you were a Jew living at the time, he would say to you, well, look, I'm greater than your God, that's your temple, look what I've done, what are you waiting for? And so a lot of Jews said, yeah, he's right, and they went his way. But there is a small group, and they called the Hashmonaim, and funnily enough, they were the priests, they were the Kohanim. And the Hashmonaim, that were the religious Jews by excellence, they the one who started the resistance and created the Maccabim. And within 3 years of the resistance, they went back into the temple and were able to fight back those Greeks, and they were able to take back the temple. And on the very first day of when they took the temple, they actually found out there was not enough oil. They knew it was going to take 8 days to get some oil, and lo and behold, as soon as they used that oil, the jar got filled again. So, Hanukkah, therefore, it's of course us winning over the worst of the kind. But if you just reflect on today's world, today, I'm not sure whether it's better or worse, but today in our temple, what do we have? We have a mosque. And that's permanent feature. And we are told it's forever. And we are waiting, the Rabbinical tell us, for Mashiach to come. So I hope that day will come soon. Therefore, what's the message? What's the message of Hanukkah? Apparently there are 500 messages, and I've got one message for you. You need to stand strong for what you believe, for who you are. And if you do, God will help you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Albert. I'll give you another title now, almost Rabbi Udon, after that very nice oration. Lovely, thank you. Now it gives me great pleasure to ask Rabbi Herzog and the Deputy Premier to light the Hanukkah.
Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvoso v'tzivonu lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech Hashem Elokeinu שעשו ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם בזמן הזה.
Keep still. Please join. Hanerotanan she'anu madlikim, Hanerotanan she'anu madlikim, al hanisim ve'al haniflaot, ve'al hateshuot, ve'al hamilchamot, she'asita la'avoteinu, she'asita la'avoteinu, vayamim lahem, vayamim lahem, vayamim lahem, b'zman hazeh, al yedei kohanecha, kohanecha hakedoshim, b'chol shmonat yemei Chanukah, hanerot halalu kodeshem, v'yein lanu reshut leishtamesh b'hem, אלא לראותם בלבד, כדי להודות לשמך הגדול, על ניסיך ועל נפלאותיך ועל ישועתך. מה עשו ישועתי למען האל שביה, תיכון בית תפילתי ושם תודה לזריה, לעת אחים נדביה, מצרם נמיה, אז אגמור בשיר יבור, חנוכת המזבח, אז אגמור בשיר יבור, חנוכת המזבח, רעות צבא ויעלון כוחי תחילה, חיי מלך וקושי, ושמות אבותינו. So
please be seated again. Thank you. It's my great pleasure now to call on Rabbi Helbram, who is the President of the Rabbinical Council of Victoria, to speak. As I said earlier, I had my own Hanukkah miracle in the last week or so. On Saturday night, things weren't looking that great for me, and in fact, Rabbi is so efficient that he sent out the condolences letter straight away and wished me well and said, you know, I'm sure there'll be plenty of other things for you. And I went to bed not feeling that great, and then woke up the next morning to see that things had changed, and then over the week things got bad for me again, and then again with the first night of Hanukkah install, all of a sudden my Jewish postal votes came in and up we went again. So that was my Hanukkah miracle, and Rabbi Helbram, thank you. You know, regardless of that letter, thank you very much for the support, and thank you very much for all the work that the Rabbinical Council does for our community. Rabbi, could you please address us?
Thank you, David. Having you back is a great help. Mr. Deputy Premier, parliamentary figures who are here, everybody, distinguished guests. It was a great joy and privilege to be as the first of our activities this season, to partner Deputy Premier Merlino and with their great victory. The Jews, of course, have a special blessing for firsts. Baruch Shehecheyanu, we bless Hashem who made us live and sustained us, renewed us into a new season. And we pray that the renewed season with this new government will continue and surpass the great success it has made in its first iteration. May we all be privileged to share Hashem's blessings of a further brilliantly successful term, or to put it in Hanukkah terms, as one day's oil supply lasted 8 days, so may the Premier and his party and all the parliamentarians who support him, may their efforts be richly rewarded with many multiple successes for the benefits of all Victorians, and of course that includes our own Jewish community. By the way, just to mention, nobody seems to mention the latkes, because the latkes also have quite a miracle, and it probably would even surpass the miracle of the oil, because a latke, basically, for those who don't know what it is minced potato and fried in oil. And one latke can burn within your stomach for a lot longer than 8 days. Inept Johnny was out of money. He was a loser and desperate, so he thought, I'll try a bank robbery. He got into a bank, he was pointing his toy gun at the bank teller, and he screams, "Give me your money or you'll be geography." The teller laughed and said, "You mean history?" No, nervous Johnny shouts back, "So give me the money already and don't change the subject." Judaism, you might think, is all history. Well, it ain't. Judaism is very interested in history, but also particularly interested in modern day history. This is perhaps in one of these statements that comes again and again regarding the Hanukkah story, and in fact forms part of one of the blessings which we sang just a few moments ago. Bayamim hahem bazman hazeh. In those days, but again repeated and valid and relevant today. When we watch the Hanukkah candles burn, is it only about history? Is it only about the events that happened in the Beit HaMikdash, in the temple? Is it only about the many countries which came under the subjugation, first of course of Alexander the Great, and in fact that was the way that he took over Israel was a very benign thing and quite a miraculous event? Or as we say, the generals that followed after him, dividing up the spoils when he died so young, they came and decided, as Albert very eloquently put it, that everybody should be the same, and they should all adopt the same customs. And they went about it in a very forceful way, and that forceful way precipitated through the Maccabees and the Chashmonaim of the priestly tribe a reaction which was extremely powerful, and eventually they were able to recapture the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, and to try to reconsecrate it, purify it as had been before. In our prayer book, the prayer that we say, which makes it special for Chanukah, the Al Nisim, or for the miracles, talks about the oppressors came to say, to make them, that is the Jews, lahashkicham Toratecha, to forget, cause them to forget the Torah. What does that mean? This was a war of forced assimilation. The oppressors came to turn Israel into a Hellenist society and to make us forget the covenant with God, what it means to be a committed Jew, and what Judaism and Jewish destiny is all about. They were fighting for a Judaism of relevance, of immediacy, and for a dynamic Judaism that lives and breathes then, and as it breathes and lives in us today. Because it was given to us by our God for all times, all places, and all situations. Every dimension of human existence is contained within our Torah, our Judaism. It gives us God's plans and ideas for how we are to live our lives. As I said, by Yamim Haim, it was in those days, Bazman Hazeh, in this time as well. On Chanukah, when we stand around the warm glow of these bright flickering candles, we celebrate and remember their meaning, and we resolve to take up their challenge to refresh our commitment to make every facet of Judaism a relevant and most significant part of our lives. We strive to let the inspiration of this festival take us to new heights and stimulating us and illuminating our lives to recommit to those eternal, ancient yet new precepts which underpin our lives and continue to buttress the goodness and enlightenment Judaism continues to contribute to us and into the entire world. Chag Urim Sameach, a festival of lights of great joy to you all.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Helbram. We're almost now at the end of the formalities today, and as just about any Jewish festival, we have a saying that in many times in these things, we've seen our enemy come, try to kill us, we survived, we celebrated life, and then we ate. And this is now the conclusion of what Hanukkah is all about, joining in the festivities of not only light, but the festivities of good food, of ponchkas, of latkes, and your doctors and your dietitians will tell you that there is one time, there is one exception when you can eat oil and oily food, and that is over Hanukkah. Enjoy the festivities of food and friendship, and Hanukkah Sameach to all of you.
Amen.